At first glance, Qatar should not be this powerful. It is small. It is mostly desert. It has no giant rivers, no endless farmland, no massive population, and no huge territory to dominate the map. And yet, this tiny country became one of the richest places on earth. Its capital now shines with futuristic towers, luxury hotels, global stadiums, and an airport that connects continents. But the strangest part is this: none of that wealth seems to make sense when you only look at the surface, because Qatar's real power was never above the sand. It was hidden beneath it. Beneath the desert, beneath the waters of the Gulf, Qatar found the invisible force that would turn a quiet peninsula into a global machine of money, energy, and influence. So the question is not just how Qatar became rich. The real question is, how did a country this small make the world depend on what it had buried underground? Before this story continues, subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and tell in the comments where you are watching from. This channel follows the hidden stories behind the world's richest and most surprising countries. For much of its history, Qatar did not look like a global powerhouse. Life was simpler, harder, and much closer to the sea. People depended on fishing, trade, pearl diving, and the rhythms of the Gulf. The desert shaped daily life. The heat was intense. Resources were limited. The future did not seem obvious. There was no skyline filled with towers. No image of a futuristic capital. No global events bringing cameras from every corner of the world. Qatar was small, quiet, and easy for larger powers to overlook. But that is what makes the transformation so strange. In just a few decades, the image of the country changed almost completely. Doha grew upward. Roads expanded. New districts appeared. The airport became a major international hub. Planes with Qatar's name began crossing continents. Museums, universities, stadiums, hotels, and business centers appeared where the desert once felt almost empty. To an outsider, it could look like magic, but it was not magic. It was a chain reaction. First came the discovery, then came the strategy, then came the money, then came the buildings, then came the influence. Qatar did not simply become rich because it had a valuable resource. Other countries have resources too. The deeper story is how Qatar took something hidden, something invisible to most people, and turned it into one of the most powerful engines of national transformation in the modern world. The skyscrapers were only the visible part. The real machine was underneath. And once Qatar understood what it had, the country began to move from survival to ambition, from obscurity to attention, and from a tiny desert nation to a name almost everyone in the world would eventually recognize. Qatar's secret was not buried under ordinary sand alone. Much of it was hidden beneath the waters of the Gulf and a massive field of natural gas. To most people, gas is invisible. It has no dramatic shape. It does not shine like gold. It does not look like a treasure chest. But for Qatar, it became something even more valuable. It became leverage. Natural gas can heat homes, power industries, generate electricity, and feed the energy systems of countries far away. And when the world began needing more energy, Qatar had something many nations wanted. The country was sitting near one of the largest natural gas reserves on the planet. That discovery changed the scale of everything. Suddenly, the small desert country had a resource that connected it to major economies. It had something that could be exported, something that could bring in enormous revenue, something that could make Qatar important not because of its size, but because of what other countries needed from it. This is where the story becomes different from a simple tale of luck. Finding gas was one thing. Building an entire national strategy around it was another. Qatar had to turn an underground resource into a global business. It needed technology, infrastructure, ports, processing plants, ships, long-term contracts, and partners. It needed to move from discovery to delivery. The gas had to leave the ground, travel through systems, become usable, and reach countries thousands of miles away. That required planning. And the more Qatar built around gas, the more the country changed. The resource did not just create wealth. It created a new direction. It gave Qatar a reason to build, invest, negotiate, and imagine a future much larger than its geography. The true power of Qatar's gas was not only that it existed, the power came from what Qatar learned to do with it. Natural gas is useful, but moving it across oceans is not simple. It has to be processed, cooled, shipped, and delivered safely to distant markets. This is where liquefied natural gas, or LNG, became central to Qatar's rise. By cooling natural gas into liquid form, it becomes easier to transport by ship. That means a country like Qatar can sell energy not only to nearby neighbors, but to customers across the world. This changed everything. Qatar built industrial zones, export terminals, and fleets of specialized ships. The desert coastline became part of a global energy network. Giant vessels carried Qatari gas across the seas. Contracts connected the country to major economies. Revenue flowed back into Doha. Now the country had more than a resource. It had a machine. Gas came out of the ground. Technology prepared it. Ships moved it. Buyers depended on it. Money returned. That money built infrastructure, institutions, investments, and influence. The transformation was not instant, but it was powerful. Each shipment represented more than energy. It represented Qatar's new position in the world. A country that looked small on the map had become part of the daily life of countries much larger than itself. That is the hidden genius of Qatar's rise. It did not need to be large. It needed to be necessary. And as global demand grew, Qatar became more than a supplier. It became a strategic energy partner, a country other nations had to notice, respect, and negotiate with. The desert had not disappeared, but underneath it, Qatar had found the system that would help it rise. Once the money began to flow, Qatar faced a new question. What should a small country do with enormous wealth? The answer appeared slowly, then suddenly across the face of Doha. The capital became the symbol of Qatar's new ambition. Towers rose beside the water. Roads widened. The airport expanded into a global gateway. New neighborhoods appeared. Cultural buildings, museums, schools, universities, and business districts began telling a new story. Qatar was not just selling gas. It was building an image of itself. This image mattered. A rich country can keep its wealth hidden, but Qatar chose to make much of its transformation visible. Doha became a stage where the country could show the world that it was modern, organized, wealthy, and ready to matter. The skyline became a message. The message was clear. This small country was not trapped by the desert anymore. But the money did not stay only in buildings. Qatar invested in transport, education, sports, aviation, media, and global assets. It tried to build systems that could survive beyond one source of income. That is where the story becomes deeper, because Qatar understood that wealth from the ground can be powerful, but it can also be fragile. Energy prices can rise and fall, markets can shift, technology can change. A country that depends only on one thing can become vulnerable. So Qatar used its gas wealth to buy time. Time to build. Time to diversify. Time to become known. Time to prepare for a world that may not always look the same. Doha's towers were not just decoration. They were the visible signs of a country trying to turn underground wealth into a long-term national future. As Qatar grew richer, it also grew louder on the world stage. Not louder through size, not through a huge population, not through vast territory. It became louder through influence. Qatar invested in aviation, media, sports, education, diplomacy, real estate, and global partnerships. Its airline carried the country's name to airports around the world. Its media presence gave it a voice far beyond its borders. Its investments placed Qatari money inside important cities, companies, and institutions. Suddenly, Qatar was not just a place in the Gulf. It was appearing in conversations about business, politics, travel, sports, culture, and energy. This is one of the most interesting parts of the story. For a small nation, attention can be a form of protection. If the world knows you, depends on you, visits you, invests with you, and talks about you, then you are harder to ignore. Qatar seemed to understand this. It used wealth to build relationships. It hosted meetings. It became involved in diplomacy. It connected itself to powerful countries and international systems. It built a reputation as a place where deals could happen, where events could happen, where the world could gather. This was not accidental. It was part of a larger strategy. Qatar was turning energy into money, and money into influence. And influence can be even more valuable than wealth, because influence gives a small country room to move in a world dominated by giants. That is why Qatar's story feels so unusual. It did not simply become rich, it became visible. And visibility changed the way the world looked at this tiny desert nation. There was a moment when Qatar stopped being just a country people heard about and became a place the whole world was watching. The World Cup turned that attention into a global spotlight. For weeks, cameras focused on stadiums, roads, hotels, fans, lights, and the skyline of Doha. People who had barely thought about Qatar before were suddenly seeing its name everywhere. The country had placed itself at the center of one of the biggest events on earth. But this was not only about football. It was about national visibility. Hosting a global event is a way of telling the world, look at us. We are here. We are capable. We can organize. We can build. We can welcome the world. For Qatar, the event became part of a much larger project. The country wanted to be known, not only as a gas exporter, but as a global destination, a hub, a meeting point between regions, cultures, and economies. The stadiums were the surface. The deeper story was reputation. A country that once seemed too small to matter had built arenas in the desert and invited the world inside. Whether people admired it, questioned it, or debated it, they were paying attention, and attention is powerful. For a small country, attention can change perception. It can attract tourism, business, partnerships, and long-term relevance. It can make a nation feel larger than it physically is. That was the real achievement. Qatar was not expanding its land. It was expanding its presence. And in the modern world, presence can be almost as important as territory. When people see Qatar's luxury, they often notice the surface first. The towers, the hotels, the stadiums, the bright lights, the expensive architecture, the polished streets, the futuristic airport. But behind the shine, there is a strategy. Qatar is not trying to become powerful in the same way as a large country. It cannot rely on massive land, a huge population, or a giant domestic market. So it has to play a different game. It must be connected. It must be useful. It must be remembered. This is why its wealth has moved into so many directions. Energy gave Qatar money. Money gave it options. Options allowed it to build soft power, the kind of influence that comes through culture, business, media, sports, education, and diplomacy. Soft power is quieter than military power. It does not always look dramatic, but it can change how a country is treated. It can open doors. It can bring leaders to the table. It can make a small country feel important in decisions that would normally belong to much larger nations. That is what Qatar has been building. A place where flights connect. A place where events happen. A place where companies invest. A place where international conversations take place. A place that the world cannot easily ignore. The desert is still there, but now it is surrounded by symbols of ambition. And the biggest symbol is this: Qatar found a way to make size less important. It did not need to become big on the map. It needed to become big in the minds of the people who make decisions. Every great rise carries a question. For Qatar, the question is not whether it became rich. That part is clear. The real question is whether the system that made it rich can carry it far into the future. Qatar's wealth came from energy, and energy has always shaped the destiny of nations. But the world is changing. Countries are searching for cleaner technologies. Markets are shifting. New competitors appear. Demand rises in some places and changes in others. This does not mean Qatar's wealth disappears overnight. Far from it. Natural gas remains important to many economies. Qatar still holds a powerful position. Its infrastructure, experience, and long-term relationships give it strength. But the country understands that the future cannot depend on one resource forever. That is why the investments matter. Education matters. Infrastructure matters. Diplomacy matters. Global partnerships matter. Tourism, aviation, technology, culture, and finance matter. Each one is part of the attempt to turn temporary advantage into lasting relevance. This is the hidden risk behind the shine. A country can become rich because of what is underground, but it stays important because of what it builds above ground. Qatar's challenge is to make sure that its gas wealth becomes more than income. It must become knowledge, institutions, stability, and influence that can continue even as the world changes. That is the next chapter of the story. The first chapter was discovery. The second was transformation. The third was influence. But the future will test whether Qatar can turn its buried power into something even stronger than energy. A nation that lasts beyond the resource that made it famous. In the end, Qatar's secret was not simply that it found gas. Many countries have natural resources. Some become rich. Some remain trapped, some waste the opportunity, some never manage to turn underground wealth into a stable national future. Qatar's story is powerful because it shows something more complete. It found a resource. Then it built a system around it. Then it used that system to build a city, a brand, a network, and a place in the world. The desert did not vanish. The country did not become large. The geography did not suddenly change, but Qatar changed what its geography meant. What once looked like a limitation became part of the story. The desert became a backdrop for ambition. The coastline became a gateway for exports. The small population became easier to support with enormous revenue. The tiny map became less important than the country's global connections. That is the wow of Qatar. It proves that a country does not need to be large to be powerful. It needs something others value and the strategy to turn that value into influence. Qatar was once a quiet desert nation that many people barely noticed, but beneath its land and waters, it held a force strong enough to rewrite its future. Gas gave Qatar wealth, strategy gave Qatar power, and ambition gave Qatar a place in the world much larger than its borders. So when people ask how a tiny desert country became one of the richest places on earth, the answer is not only underground. It is in what Qatar did after it discovered what was there. The real secret was not just buried beneath the sand. The real secret was knowing how to turn that buried power into a future the whole world would have to see.